Hi there, Junko. I want to apologize about not getting this to you. There is something very strange happening with my computer for some reason. It automatically um, only shows me new essays, or rather, it shows me essays that like threads that opened within the last month. And since your thread opened over a month ago, for some reason it just kind of it doesn't show it to me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's a weird glitch. I just have to be aware that my computer does it for some reason, or the program itself does it. um, and hopefully that won't happen. Alternatively, you could just send me a new email thread rather than sending like a response to this email over and over. That might help too. All right, let's take a look at what you did. Father staying home, mother's working, reasons, and positive or negative. Okay. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world would be keener on this trend, in which more females are outside for work and males are staying at home for their children. Although some may believe this tendency is negative, I believe it must be a positive development in modern society. This essay will discuss. Is that a comma? Yeah. Using examples from the Japanese governments and the OECD to demonstrate points and prove arguments. All right, so there's a few things happening here that I want to fix right away. This is a comma, and I don't want it. I don't want a comma here. And I thought your first sentence was awkward, even, comma regardless. So experts throughout both the developing and the developed world uh, have noticed a new trend in which more females are outside for work and males are staying home with their children. And that's fine. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Although some may believe this tendency is negative, I believe it must be, but it is a positive development in modern society. And that's okay. And then I'll tell you what's missing. This essay will discuss, how about this? The reasons for this trend and why it is positive, using examples from the Japanese government, one government, and et cetera, et cetera. So do you see why I wrote the reasons for this trend? Because they're asking you here, what could be the reasons for this? You have to address that. You have to show the examiner that you're going to cover this issue in your paragraphs. Okay? That's the whole point of the introduction, to essentially rephrase, present your position, and show the examiner what you're going to cover. All right, let's go. On the one hand, there is evidence that change in global trends towards work and life has been considered more equally between men and women. All right, that doesn't work grammatically, I'm afraid. There is evidence that changes in global trends towards work and life have allowed more equality between men and women. That's better. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, gender equality is just essential, not more essential, is essential in terms of opportunities for raising children and working for their life. I'm not really clear on that. Secondly, in particular, to make up for gaps in women's careers due to their maternity leaves, both public and private sectors have been tackling this issue by offering maternity and paternity leave for each parent with a maximum of 1 year. For example, recent statistics by the Japanese government demonstrated that there is a significant increase in the rate of parental leaves for fathers from 0.1 to 10% from 1990 to 2020, while parental leaves for mothers from 60 to 80. It must not be forgotten that although Japan is still at the lowest level with regard to the OECD's gender gap indicators. Wait, you can't use although like this. Although needs to have two clauses. So instead, what you could have used is however. I don't think you need this sentence. It doesn't help you. It's not relevant. We're not interested in Japan specifically, but you're using Japan as an example. It would make sense if you had said, it must not be forgotten that Japan is at the lowest levels for paternity leaves, And other countries throughout the world are much higher, showing, so this tells us why you're telling us this, showing the trend towards fathers staying home with their children. Okay, that would have made sense. Therefore, it's conclusively clear that the Japanese are still behind compared to other nations in terms of paternity leaves, but it has a hope to proceed. No, get rid of this sentence. This is not what this is about. This is not a discussion about Japan specifically. You're supposed to be discussing the reasons why fathers are staying home while mothers are going out to work. So get rid of this and clarify that that basically, therefore, um, additional opportunities in the workforce for women and changing policies regarding maternity and paternity leave have allowed women to go out and work and men to stay at home. That's what you should have written. Let's keep going. On the other hand, although there is a case for the traditional belief that infants and toddlers should be taken care of by mothers for their initial development at home, the impact of economic loss for families and nations cannot be overstated. It is largely because fathers are not always able to support their families and relatives entirely as the breadwinner here. For example, if the females are engaging in high-level professions such as doctors, scientists, and even presidents of corporations, it is possible that their salaries would be higher than their spouses, here apostrophe S, because you mean their spouse's salary. Consistent with this line of thinking is that fathers are staying home for their children, taking paternity leave for a while, or changing to freelance work permanently. This is possible Therefore, it is possible to state beyond doubt that more fathers and males are likely to be keen on domestic and unpaid chores at the house in the future, while more women will go work outside. Okay. I didn't like this first sentence. I didn't like it because essentially this first sentence is supposed to somehow rephrase something you talked about here, and it didn't. You introduced a brand new idea, and I didn't really think it belonged here. So I would have said something like, let's see, let me think about what sentence would have worked. I don't know. I'm not really sure. In fact, I'm actually going to say something else. I would not have written this as a on the one hand, on the other hand. The reason why is because it's not a discuss both sides essay. It's two questions. It's what could be the reasons and what is it positive or negative. So I feel it's actually inappropriate to have on the one hand and on the other hand. I would have done something else entirely, and I would have changed that first sentence. All right, so to conclude from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that not this. We want to know which tendency. I firmly believe that the tendency for men to stay home while mothers work in this modern era is a positive development. It's predicted that gender equality, both domestic and social, get rid of the aspect, will increasingly grow in importance. Okay, so yeah, I like most of it. There are some things that need to be worked on: grammar, coherence, and cohesion, things like that. But you generally have the right idea. I need you just to work on those other things in terms of the grammar, the language, the linking between your paragraphs. These sorts of things need to be worked on. Okay, let's take a look at your task 1. All right, let's take a look at rainfall. The line graph shows information about rainfall in 3 regions from January to December. Good. Where's your overview? Okay. All right, we'll talk about that at the end. In England, the amount of rainfall in January was recorded just above 100 ml and dropped to 90 in March. Okay. The trend of rising and falling continued for several months and reached the lowest point in the graph for the month of June. In the month of June at 60. After that, it illustrated that the level of rain fluctuated constantly and reached around 130 in December. Okay, so let me tell you what I like about this. I like that you began in January. I like that you mentioned the lowest point. That was good. I like that you mentioned the end. That was good. If it were up to me, I would have mentioned the highs. You didn't mention them at all. I thought that you shouldn't have mentioned March. It's not particularly important. There are other periods where it reaches similar low levels. Instead, what I would have focused on was those three peaks. So for me, for England, I would have said point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So it wouldn't have been much different from what you did, but those are the points that are important. In Scotland, the amount of rainfall in January was about 120, and this figure fell significantly to its lowest level of roughly 20 in February. Afterward, this figure significantly went up to the peak point of 140 in March. In April, the amount of rainfall was less. No, do you mean 50 ml less? I'm not sure. Careful with this. Do you mean that it was just 50 ml or that it was 50 ml less than 140? That's confusing, so make it clear. Then started to rise slightly until July. Then after this, the figure dropped until September. Full stop. The following month, rainfall, you need a noun here, began to increase drastically to 140, started to plummet to 50 before reaching 105 in December. All right, I feel like you have a little too much information here. It gets a little detailed, and when you have so much detail, it's very difficult to kind of keep track of what you're talking about. So Scotland is that light blue, right? Okay, so the points that are important: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how do you do it? You could say that Scotland started out with volatile rainfall. All right, so in January, or rather, volatile differences in rainfall, or dramatic differences in rainfall, that would be good. While it had the highest rainfall in January at 120, it dropped to its lowest point in February of around 120, only to rise again to the first of two peaks in March at 130. After several months of fluctuation, the second peak was reached in September. Additional fluctuation occurred until the year ended. Let's do that. Additional fluctuation occurred until the year ended in December at just over 100 ml. Okay, so that's it. I've mentioned those 5 key points, and that's all you need to do. In Wales, the amount of rainfall was the least at just below 50 ml. Okay, get rid of that. You could have said in Wales, the amount of rainfall was the least in the 3 regions at just below 50 ml. So word order. And this figure increased slightly in February and dipped to 50 until June. That's confusing. I don't understand what's going on here. We're talking about Wales, dipped to 50 until June. All right, that whole sentence confused me. I can't even visualize it. We'll talk about it later. Then there was the highest record in July at 135, and it went down just below the amount of June's record. When? I don't understand that. Hold on a second. What are you saying to me? Oh, okay. So June was really low, and then July it, had the peak, and then in July, in the next month, it went down even below June, I guess. Okay, it's a little confusing. It remained steady for 2 months before improving to 105 in November, and it decreased to about 50 in December. Okay, overall, it can be seen that the amount of rainfall throughout the year was very varied in each region. All right. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the points that I would discuss for Wales, and then I want to talk about your overview. So for Wales, what could you say here? Wales started out the year at the lowest point, just below 50 ml. It too had some fluctuation in the first third of the year, remaining below 75 ml. Yet it reached a peak in July of 130, only to drop to just below 50 between August and October. And it ended the year out in December at just above 50. I forgot to mention that this was the lowest point of the year. I forgot that. That was the only thing. So that's more or less how we do it. Now, regarding your overview, I thought your overview was a little sparse. I thought you could have said something else. So one thing that I find really good to include in this particular overview is to mention that even though all three experienced a lot of fluctuation, overall, England had the highest rainfall on average. How can I say that? Because England did not have any of those lows. Okay, therefore had a higher average rainfall. All right, so that's my feedback for this set. There's some work to do, so I want you to work on this. I want you to study the comments, and I want you to see what you can do to improve. Okay, so go ahead and apply the things we've talked about, and I look forward to seeing more work from you soon. Good luck.